Hey guys, Terry here. Today I wanted to show you some different methods with stamping. So I first want to show you stamping with a block, and then I next want to talk about the MISTI, and then finally we'll end with the Brother ScanNCut because I want to show you what it can do. So let's start with the stamping block here. This is a Stampin' Up set called Bike Ride. It's got a lot of pieces to it, and here's a sample card. I like to take the pages out of the catalog after the catalog is done and just kind of keep their examples. I tear those pages out and put it in with the stamp set so I can remember how to make kind of those cute cards that they designed the stamp set around. You don't have to do it that way, but it at least is a inspiration starting point. So what I've done is I have taken the piece of the bike and I've put it on a block. And this is a nice easy way to do your stamping. You simply get the stamp inked up using the ink pad. So it's clear, so I'm looking through it and just making sure I've gotten all the spots. And then you simply stamp it down onto your piece of paper. And I usually let it sit there for just a second. You're letting the ink get absorbed into the paper, giving it, lots of pressure on each side. I'm going to be careful not to wiggle it because I don't want it to get blurry. And then you lift that up and you've got a good stamped image. Now sometimes your image doesn't come through all the way. Like for example, here on the bike I see some spots right there. So you might take like a Sharpie or a marker and fill that in. Sometimes you can fix it with just doing something like that. And most of the time people won't notice. You're putting a cute card together. They're not going to notice the imperfections like you do. But that's using a stamp block, and it works great. Especially on these clear stamps, you can see through them, you can reposition it, you can see what you're doing. The other thing I like to use is a stamp chamois, and this is just a, it's like one of those chamois that you clean the car with, but it's just nice to be able to wash off your stamp onto the chamois. You can either, if you're using the block, put it on the chamois like this, or you can pick up the chamois and bring it to your stamp and wipe it off that way. Both ways work, and the chamois work great. This is from Lawn Fawn, but there's many companies that make them. And I'll have links on my website to all the products that I show. I don't sell any of these things. I just find it handy to share the information with you guys and have handy links on the website. So the block works great. I'm all for that. But there's times that you want to use the dies to cut these shapes out. So in particular, in this stamp set, this bike ride set, there's matching dies. So what you would do after stamping this is you would take this over to your cutting machine, like your Big Shot, and you would line this up, and you might use, like I've got some purple tape here, you might use a piece of purple tape. This tape is made, so it's kind of like painter's tape. It's probably exactly like painter's tape, where it does not stick to the paper, doesn't ruin your cardstock. So you line this up as best you can. I'm kind of looking at all the different pieces here. I'm looking at the seat, I'm looking at the back, I'm looking at the pedal. And then you put your tape on there. You might put a couple pieces on, and then take that over to your cutter. So let me do that. Okay, so here I took it over to my Big Shot, and I placed it on the sandwich. Now I'll also mention too that I have a magnetic platform, and that's nice because you don't always need the purple tape. This die will supposedly stay in place. Well, do it this way. Pop this off. And then here you've got your piece stamped. So notice that I didn't get it perfect. And like I said, I think somebody would enjoy a card, whether it's perfect or not. But I would say that I miss the handlebars here a little bit. There's a little bit extra white here. This part looks good. So it is very hard to line those dies up. So here's an alternative. The other thing I'll mention, when I was showing the magnetic platform, I wasn't showing that it does hold on to it there. So it'll hold your dies in place. So that's really handy. But back to the second method here. So that was using a stamp block and then cutting it out on the Big Shot. Okay, so now I want to show using a MISTI. So if you're not familiar with the MISTI is a, what's it stand for? MISTI stands for the most interesting stamping tool invented. So that's what the MISTI stands for. It was invented a number of years ago, and many companies have copied it. But what I want to show you on this method is I went over to my die cutting machine and I ran it through, cutting out several, just out of white cardstock. I cut out a whole stack of the bicycle, and you'll notice it's not stamped yet. So the idea is that you cut, like I said, I cut a whole bunch of them. I cut a whole stack of them, so I've got a stack ready to go. But then I also cut one just in the middle of what we'll call a template or a stencil. So I cut one, and I wanted to have this border around it. So what I'm doing is I'm placing well, I'll show you another way to do it. Let me get a piece of paper here. Let me get a little piece of paper. Let me use this one. So, take our piece of paper, and we will stamp this. So we will just close the door to pick up the stamp. Make sure our paper is down in this corner, and we ink this up. Ink that up, and at this point I'm just stamping it. And if I wasn't going to cut it out, I could just use it this way. Okay, so this is how I'm using the MISTI instead of the block. And what's nice about this method is, like for example, if that didn't stamp all the way, I can re-ink it. Give it some more ink, especially on the spots that it missed. And then reapply that. And now I've got a good solid image. So that's why the MISTI was invented. And we can use our stamp Shammy and wash off the stamp. So that would be our one-time use and done. But let's say we want to make, a series of these for a bunch of cards. So what we can do is we can leave this in place, take our stencil, put it down here so that I can see that it's lined up really well on all the pieces. And then I can put my magnets down in place to hold that in place. And then what I can do is I can drop in those pieces that I cut. So now, keeping this stamp in the same place, ink this back up again, push it down, and now I've stamped that piece. Let me pop it out of there. And it's come out really well. So it is off a little bit. I would play with the sizing of that. We can throw this one away. We can reposition this here, keeping all our papers in the same place. I'm just scooting this and adjusting it a little bit better. popping in another one that I cut out. And you can just see that you can have a whole assembly line here going. And I'm not proposing that these things have to be perfect. I just want you to know that if you had to mass produce these, this would be a really, really handy way. Oh, it stuck to it. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so that's just a way that you can kind of mass produce it by using this stencil. But the next way that I want to show you is an even faster way to do it. So let me get that set up. I'll just mention too that the other thing I do is these pieces that I've stamped and cut and my template, I'll keep that in the stamp case too so that I can use it for next time. But let's go to the other method, which is using the Brother ScanNCut. So what I wanted to show on this method is, now I'm using my larger MISTI for this. This is the original and full-size one. So what I've done is I have arranged all the different stamp images on here, and then I stamped them on here. So I went like this. So let me line this one back up here. So I laid out all of my stamp images from the stamp set. Not all of them, but many of them. And what I will do, to show you how I did this, I inked up, after I picked them up with the stamp MISTI door, I inked them all. Let me put a white piece of paper under there so you can see. So I'm just giving a good bit of ink to those stamps, and then I'm closing the door, making sure my paper is all the way down in the corner. You can also have your magnet on here, hold it in place. So I'm swinging the door over. And then another thing that I recently learned was use your brayer just to make sure you're getting all the way across there and applying even pressure. I'm pushing down a good bit, and I'm just using the brayer. They make a larger one too. I like this one because it's nice and small. Fits in my little tool bag. But I'm just giving that a good push down. And then there's my stamped images. And then I simply turn the page around because, like the wheels, I want to have two wheels. So I've stamped this twice. So let's take this over to the Brother ScanNCut and I'll show you how this works. Okay, so this is the Brother ScanNCut. I'm simply going to tape this down on the mat, and it can go anywhere on the mat. My mat is kind of lost its sticky, so I put down a couple pieces of tape just to hold it in place. You could also use your brayer to push this down onto the mat. Okay, but then let me show you on the menu here. We've turned on the machine. I'm going to hit the load mat button. Okay, so it has loaded the mat onto there. Lift this up so you can see the whole thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to scan these images and cut them out. So I'm going to tell it to scan, direct cut. I could cut these shapes and save them, but for today I'm just going to cut these out. So I've got it on black and white. You can also tell it color. This is just black on white paper, so we'll just leave it on black and white. And we hit the start button. I'm making sure I've got plenty of room between the machine and the wall, because that mat's going to come back out there. Okay. And then it is recognizing. So it's looking at all the images that was on that paper, And here we have our images. So I'm just going to press OK. I'm just going to bring you down here so you see. So it's recognized all the shapes. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit because I don't want to pick up all the other little scraps that were on the mat, and I don't want the lip of the paper either. So I'm hitting OK. I also want to tell it to leave a little border around it. So it's set to cut on the lines. I'm going to increase it a little bit. So 0.4 is not very much space. I think I'll leave it at 0.4. I usually do at 0.08. If you keep increasing, it goes up in size, and it's kind of showing you on the image how it's cutting around that border too. But let's just leave it at 0.4. Hit OK. Hit OK. And then I'm going to tell it to cut. And tell it to start. And it tells me that it's going to take 2 minutes. And I'm going to pause the video, but I do want you to see how it is tracing around each of the items. We'll come back when it's closer to being done. Okay, so it's telling me it finished cutting. We'll hit OK. I will unload the mat. And then let's come back over to the table and I'll show you how it cut. So look at this. This is where the brother just shines. So now I have all those images stamped quickly and cut quickly. Isn't that just a incredible? So let me show the pieces here. We got this. We've got the bike tires. We've got the basket that goes on the back here. We've got the little puppy dog. We've got the basket. You can put the books or the puppy dogs back there. You can put apples in the basket. Here's flowers. So look how nicely it cut out all those shapes. So we stamped it with the MISTI, put it on the brother, and let the brother cut around the items. So I think that is just such an easy way to cut out all the pieces for this stamp set. So I've shown you how to use the block and put the stamps on the block, and that is a nice quick way for doing a one-off. You know, that works perfectly. I showed you how to use the MISTI and use a template so that it has, you know, a place that you can stamp it and then put your die piece in there and stamp the die piece. And then I also showed you how the brother ScanNCut. So I think it depends on what you're using, but it is nice to know that all three of those methods you know, exist, and then depending on what you want to do. So I stamped them all in black. They could have been stamped in different colors. It's also got stamps in here that allow you to color in the pieces. For example, here's a little piece that lets you stamp the scarf of the puppy dog. So you could even cut these pieces out and then use your stamp block to you know, pick up that little guy and put ink color onto the little puppy dog scarf. So that's an idea too, is to kind of use a combination of using the brother ScanNCut to cut it out and then putting the stamp on here to add color to these things, because there's stamps for the flowers, the apples, the basket, and the books. So it's a really cute set. So I hope I showed you something new today, and I hope you kind of put one of these methods to practice and have fun making something today. If you haven't already, please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 this year, and that would really help me out. So I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.